Good day everyone, I'm Teacher Justin, and for today we're going to solve quadratic equations using completing the square method. So, meron tayong iba't ibang klaseng way kung paano mag-solve ng quadratic equation, and one of the ways of us solving quadratic equation is using completing the square. So, let me guide you with this example. Item number 1, we have x squared plus 6x minus 4 is equal to 0. So, our first step in solving quadratic equation is for us to place all the variable term in one side of the equation and all the constant term in the other. So, separate natin lahat na may variable x sa kabila at yung constant ilipat natin sa right side ng equation natin. So, we transfer negative 4 to the other side. We will have x squared plus 6x sa left side, tapos positive 4 sa kabila. So, remember when we transfer a term, we have to change the sign. After natin i-isolate yung ating constant term, so we have to make sure that the numerical coefficient of our x squared is equal to 1. So kung 1 yan, let's proceed to the next step, which is we have to perform completing the square. And sa completing the square, gagamit tayo ng formula that is c is equal to the square quantity of b over 2, wherein b is the middle term, which is yung coefficient ni x. Okay? So, yung coefficient ni x dito is 6. So, we will substitute b with 6. Then, let's simplify this. 6 divided by 2 is 3. And 3 squared is equal to 9. Therefore, ang idadagdag natin dito sa binomial na to, that will make it a perfect square trinomial, is we have to add 9. Now, remember, na pag nag-add tayo ng 9 sa isang side ng equation, dapat mag-a-add din tayo ng 9 sa kabilang side. So, ganun yung equality. Okay? Whatever value you add, subtract on one side of the equation, you have to apply it in the other side of the equation as well. So now meron na tayong perfect square trinomial dito sa ating left side. So we can factor this using perfect square trinomial factoring. So we will have the square of x plus 3. So take note, we get the square root of the first term, get the square root of the last term. Then we square the whole thing. Okay? Tapos it is equal to 13. So 4 plus 9 is 13. So, since we have one variable x here, we can apply extraction. So, isolate natin yung variable x by getting the square root of both sides. Tapos, makakancel out yung ating exponent at radical. So, matitira is x plus 3 is equal to positive negative square root of 13. So, remember that every time we will use the square root property, we need to get both positive and negative roots. Kaya siya may positive negative dito. So, since hindi na natin masisimplify si square root of 13, then we will leave it as square root of 13. Tapos, ilipat natin si positive 3 to the other side of the equation. So, we will have x is equal to negative 3 plus minus square root of 13. And that will be the value of x of our equation. We will have x is equal to negative 3 plus minus square root of 13. And that's it. Ta-da! Alright. So let's solve for the roots of this quadratic equation, x squared minus 10x plus 7 using completing the square. So, in using completing the square, ang gagawin natin, first step is for us to transfer all the variable term in one side and all the constant term in the other. So, lipat natin si 7 sa kabilang side ng equation natin. So, we will have x squared minus 10x is equal to negative 7. So remember, when we transfer a term to the other side, we change the sign. Then, ang susunod natin gagawin is we need to convert this binomial into a perfect square trinomial using completing the square method. So we will use the formula c is equal to the square of b over 2. Now, let's substitute the value of b. In this case, the value of b is the coefficient of the variable x. So, in this case, it is going to be negative 10. Kasama yung sign. So, substitute natin negative 10 over 2. So, negative 10 divided by 2 is negative 5. And then we square 5. That will give us 25. Now, to complete this perfect square trinomial, we need to add 25. Remember, pag nag-add tayo ng value sa isang side, we will also add the same thing in the other side. So, mag-a-add tayo ng 25 sa kabila. Now, meron na tayong perfect square trinomial sa left side. So, ang gagawin natin dyan, we have to apply factoring. So, we can apply factoring perfect square trinomial. So, we get the square root of the first term, get the square root of the last term, and then the operation between them is subtraction. Tapos, we square the whole thing. So, we will have the square of x minus 5 as the factor of our perfect square trinomial. Okay? Tapos, i-add natin si negative 7 and 25. That will give us 18. Okay? Then, let's proceed to our next step is for us to solve for the value of x using extraction. So, ang gagawin natin is first, we have to perform the square root property to eliminate the exponent 2. So, kunin natin yung square root of both sides. So, we will have x minus 5 will be equal to the square root of 18. Remember that the square root of 18 has a perfect square factor na 9 and yung other factor niya is 2. So, we get the factor of 18 na may perfect square, 9 times 2. Then, let's simplify this. So, take note na meron din tayong positive negative kasi in-apply natin yung square root property. Okay? Then, let's simplify this further by getting the square root of 9 and square root of 2 separately. So, this will give us positive negative 3 square root of 2. Ayan. Tapos, let's proceed to the next step. Let's remove negative 5 and transfer it to the other side of the equation. Changing the sign, it will now be x is equal to positive 5 plus minus 3 square root of 2. And that will be the value of our x. And that's it. The value of x is equal to 5 plus 3 square root of 2 and 5 minus 3 square root of 2. Tada! Alright, 0 using completing the square. So, in solving quadratic equation using completing the square, our first step is to make sure na yung numerical coefficient natin ng leading term must be equal to 1. If ever meron tayong numerical coefficient sa x squared, we have to divide both sides by the numerical coefficient of our leading term. So, we will have to divide each term by 2. So, 2x squared divided by 2 will be x squared. Negative 16x divided by 2, it will be equal to negative 8x. Then, 8x divided by 2, that will give us positive 4. Tapos, it is equal to 0 divided by 2. So, 0 divided by 2 is 0. So, ang next step natin is for us to separate the variable term and yung ating constant term, ililipat natin sa kabila. So, dito, ang ililipat natin is si positive 4. So, transfer positive 4 to the other side. So, we will have x squared minus 8x. It is equal to negative 4. So, every time we transfer a term to the other side of the equation, we have to change the sign. Tapos, ang susunod natin gagawin will be, we have to apply completing the square. So, we have to convert this binomial into a perfect square trinomial. So, what are you going to add to this binomial to make it a perfect square trinomial? So, we have a formula for that. So, ang formula natin is c is equal to the square of b over 2. So, substitute lang natin yung value ng ating b. In this case, ang value ng b natin is the numerical coefficient of the variable x. So, in this case, it is negative 8. So, substitute lang natin. C is equal to the square of negative 8 over 2. Then, let's divide negative 8 by 2. So, negative 8 divided by 2 will give us negative 4. And then, we get the square of negative 4. That will give us 16. So, ang idadagdag natin dito sa binomial na to make it a perfect square trinomial is we have to add 16. And remember na every time na mag-a-add tayo in one side of the equation, we also have to add the same value in the other side of the equation. So, we will have x squared minus 8x plus 16. That is a perfect square trinomial. And we have negative 4 plus 16 in the other side of the equation. So, para balance yung ating equation. Now, let's perform factoring perfect square trinomial dito sa ating left side of the equation. So, yung factor niya magiging the square of x minus 4. And it is equal to positive 12. Ayan. So, now let's solve for the value of x using extraction. So, tanggalin natin tong exponent using the square root property. So, we get the square root of both sides. So, we will have x minus 4 is equal to positive negative square root of 4 times 3. So, remember, if we cannot get the square root of the number, we have to simplify that. So, hanap tayo ng factors ni 12 na may perfect square. So, yung factors ni 12 na may perfect square is 4 times 3. Then, we get the square root of 4 and square root of 3 separately. That will give us x minus 4 is equal to positive negative 2, kasi yun yung square root ng 4, square root of 3 because hindi na natin siya pwedeng i-simplify. So, we will have x minus 4 is equal to positive negative 2 square root of 3. Then, ang susunod nating step is for us to transfer negative 4 to the other side of the equation. Changing the sign, it will now be equal to positive 4 plus minus 2 square root of 3. And that will be the value of x. X will be equal to 4 plus 2 square root of 3 and 4 minus 2 square root of 3. And that's it. Ta-da! Alright. And that is it. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you have comments, questions, recommendations, suggestions for my next video, please leave them in our comment section below. Share this video and subscribe. And for more videos like this, you can go to my channel, Teacher Justin. And that is it for today. Again, I'm Teacher Justin. Goodbye, God bless, and stay safe. See you on my next video. Peace.